Hi everyone, it's Margie from Homestead. We are talking today about Drapery Fullness and how that would apply to your window and how it affects the overall look of the drapery. So when we refer to Drapery Fullness, primarily we're talking about how much fabric is used in a certain space of your window. So for instance, if you wanted drapery that closed in front of your 20-inch window, I particularly like to use 2.5 times fullness, which means 20 times 2.5 is 50 inches of fabric compressed into that 20-inch space. That's a nice full look without being too bunchy or too skimpy. So these panels are one width, and we refer to widths of drapery like this when we're talking about stationary panels. So if you told me, Margie, I just want stationary panels that don't move, they're going to just dress up the window and not operate for function, they're just going to look pretty, we would put one width of fabric on a narrow window. We might double that and have 2 widths of fabric on a really wide window. Or for those in-between windows, we might do a 1.5 widths. We don't want it to look like too skimpy on a big window or cover too much of your little window. So we have to pick the right amount of fullness for your particular size window. So depending on your room and how much wall space you have would determine where we put this panel. For instance, if I had about 15 inches of drape, I could either put this completely over the wall and show off the most amount of your glass, or we could put it into the glass a little bit if you don't have that much wall space to cover. You also have the type of drapery that operates and is functional. So in that case, again, I like the 2.5 fullness because it just covers the window nicely. And what we do there is we would measure your window, multiply that by 2.5, but primarily you're getting all of this fabric that's compressed over your window. Traditionally, it can be split in half over a picture window. It could draw to one side if it's a door. For the most part, that fullness is something that makes it look luxurious. We can alter the fullness, we can make it fuller and use even a wider piece of fabric, or we can maybe not use as much and space the pleats a little bit wider apart. Like if you see here, instead of 5 inches, we put a little bit more width in between to use less fabric if you're trying to keep the cost down. Another point to keep in mind is how thick the fabric is that you're using. So for instance, if you were putting a pair of shears that open and close, if you go with a regular, 2.5 fullness, I think that works. But if you went with a 2, you might not have enough fabric in there. So you always want to do a higher fullness count for a thin fabric like a sheer. And where there's a fabric that's thicker, maybe you like an upholstery weight fabric like a velvet, you may want to go with a not as full drape, maybe a 2 fullness drape, because there's a lot of material there and it's thick. And also another point to mention is if you do pick a thin fabric, sometimes it doesn't look luxurious when we line it, so we might want to add what we call interlining. It's a layer of felt-like material that goes in between the fabric and the lining, and it just gives it some nice body. Traditionally, silks and faux silks often need to be interlined. So when you're ready to put those full drapes on your window, call Homestead at 631-423-5782 and ask for Margie. Stay fabulous, my friends.